folks, and welcome back to Glenn and Adrian's Rock Talk. That's Adrian.
And that's Glenn.
And today, we're going to take a look at Keith Emerson's career. We're going to take a look at three separate clips. One being Steve Porcaro soon after the news of Emerson's passing. Another is going to be an interview with Emerson himself, where he's talking about Yes. And then a third is going to be one of his songs from the very last ELP album, Black Moon, from 1992. All of this is in service to paying tribute to him on the eve of what would have been his 80th birthday, which is November 2nd. Of course, he passed in 2016. He left quite a legacy behind, and I thought we would start by taking a look at that Steve Porcaro clip talking about what impact Emerson had on the industry. So why don't we start there? Adrian, first of all, I assume you haven't seen any of these things.
No, not yet.
No. Okay. All right, let's just go through. Let's take a look.
Thank you very much. That song was written for my brother Mike, but I want to dedicate it to all of us. Now I'd like to tell you a little story, if you don't mind. It's been a rough day for me today, and please bear with me. I only speak English. In the summer of 1971, I was only 13 years old, and I'd never been to a rock concert before. And my brothers, Mike Porcaro and Jeff Porcaro, along with David Page and my friend Andy Leeds and his brother Steve, took me to my first concert at the Hollywood Bowl. And we went to see Edgar Winter's White Trash. We loved R&B music, and we went to see Edgar. And he was opening for two bands that I never heard of. One was called Humble Pie, and the other band was called Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And
Nice bill.
Yeah.
Edgar Winter's White Trash was amazing that night. We loved it. They killed it that night. They were amazing. And the next band, Humble Pie, played, and the crowd freaked out. They loved it. They were standing on their chairs applauding. And I remember thinking, how is this next band going to follow that? How can they follow such a huge response from the crowd? And then, while they were setting up Emerson, Lake and Palmer's equipment, I saw the keyboard technician working on his setting up Keith's keyboards, and all of a sudden I heard this very low sound, and it slid up to the top, and it was loud, and it sounded amazing, and it gave me the chills. And I remember I said out loud, "What the fuck is that?" It freaked me out. And Emerson, Lake and Palmer came out, and they were amazing. They blew my mind. And towards the end of the show, Keith Emerson said, "We're going to do a song we've never done before. We just recorded it. And it's the story of an armadillo tank called Tarkus." And right then, my life changed. I left that concert knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like Keith Emerson. I could hardly play at all in those days, but I just left knowing what I wanted to do. I couldn't stop thinking about the synthesizer and the sounds he made and his performance. And you flash to high school, and I'm in my band with Steve Lukather, and while I could not play like Keith Emerson, I thought maybe if I had a lot of keyboards like he did, that I could try to be like him. And my bandmates, Steve Lukather, Mike Landau, Carlos Vega, John Pierce, they wound up being the ones that had to help me carry my Hammond organ and all my keyboards and my borrowed synthesizers to all of our gigs. And they hated me for it, but I was starting to learn how to play synthesizers. When David Page and my brother Jeff Porcaro were putting Toto together, I don't think they really needed another keyboard player, but they had seen that I'd been learning, while I couldn't play like Keith Emerson, I was learning synthesizers, and they let me in their band. I think they thought I would come in handy. So tonight, I want to thank my brothers, Mike Porcaro, Jeff Porcaro. I want to thank David Page, my friend Andy Leeds, his brother Steve, and I want to thank them for taking me to see Keith Emerson, my hero, who we lost last night. There's a lot I do not know, but I know if it was not for them taking me to that show, and if it was not for me seeing Keith Emerson and being inspired by him, that I would not be standing here tonight in Osaka, playing for you, doing what I love. I know that was a fact. And I want to dedicate this entire Japanese tour to my brothers Mike and Jeff and Keith Emerson. And they took me to the Hollywood Bowl in 1971. And I still can't play like Keith Emerson, but I'm never going to stop trying. Thank you very much.
Here once more for Steve Porcaro.
Very humble and heartfelt tribute.
Yeah, and of course, for those who don't know, the band he was talking about is Toto. Both his brothers, Mike and Jeff, have passed away at this point. At this time, this actual announcement happened right after Keith's passing. Of course, that was March of 2016. Mike Porcaro passed in 2015, and Jeff, of course, way back in 1992. Yeah, that was really heartfelt.
Yeah.
Some nice words there. Just
See the emotion in Steve's face and hear it in his voice as he tells the story.
Yeah, that this is a musician that had a serious impact on him and inspired him. So, as a professional musician, I mean, that's good. That's always good to hear. He wasn't the only one that admired Keith Emerson. It's funny, there were some links between ELP and Yes. Of course, we know about some of those through the band Asia from later on, but even way back, it turns out both, Chris Squire and Greg Lake were both friends. In fact, they both were roommates at one point in London. So they were good friends. And so was Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson, which apparently a lot of people believe the opposite is true and that they hated each other or just didn't get along, but that's not the case. They played differently enough from each other that I don't think they considered each other competition. So with that in mind, why don't we take a look at the next clip that we have here, which is Emerson talking for a few minutes about Yes. This is labeled bonus interviews regarding the Yes story. So let's go ahead and see what we have here.
Alrighty.
A band called The Nice in the 60s, and after David O'List had to leave, I was looking for another guitar player. And that guitar player was none other than Steve Howe. And I think he was with a band called Tomorrow. We did an audition, and I felt that if anybody is going to replace Davey O'List, then it should be Steve Howe. A brilliant musician, and I really, really hoped that. But he called me up about 2 days after we played together, and he said, "No," he said, "I've got this opportunity with another band." I didn't know what other band that was, but it turned out to be Yes. And later on, when Yes had established itself, I was looking for a bass player to form my new band after I'd split up The Nice. And I approached Chris Squire, And Chris said, well, I don't feel comfortable handling lead vocals. I'm okay on harmonies. And Chris suggested some other guy that he would feel much happier working with. But I disregarded that because I wanted to keep to the trio format. And this would have meant making it into a quartet, which didn't appeal to me. So basically, I was poaching. And it's kind of ironic that around about the mid-70s, when ELP were playing to sold-out 14,000-seater stadiums in America, I got back to England after a very successful tour, and my phone went at 11:30 at night, and it was their then manager, Brian Lane. And hi, Keith. Hello. Would you like to join Yes? Now, you got to imagine, this is 11:30 at night, and I'm in bed, almost getting over jet lag, and I'm being asked if I want to join Yes. Well, I had heard that Rick Wakeman had, I think he'd left the band, or he was in between, or something, whether Patrick Moraz had left or whatever. They had a lot of changes. And I couldn't believe that I'd been asked to join Yes. And my response was, Brian, why would I want to do that? I've just come off the tour, playing to 14,000 seater stadiums. It's sold out. I've got my own band. Why would I want to join Yes? He said, well, there's no harm in asking. And I don't know. I hope that John Anderson didn't take offense by this, but I had my own band.
Okay, I'm going to assume that happened somewhere in the mid-'70s.
Okay.
Because that's when Patrick Moraz was associated with the band. So it was after Rick Wakeman left. Rick Wakeman left after Tales of Topographic Oceans. I think he did that tour afterwards, which, that triple live album that came out, he's on that. But after that, for Relayer, they got Patrick Moraz. And then Patrick Moraz left pretty much after that album. He did do a tour with them, actually, in 1975. So it must have been around that time.
Before today, I never knew Keith Emerson was asked to play for Yes.
Yeah, that was surprising. I didn't know that either.
And after a major ELP concert, I mean, what were they thinking?
Yeah, this would have been after that huge tour that they did after brain salad surgery. Remember, for a while, they didn't put out any other albums for a while after that. Like, I think it took them 3 years, because the tour was so long. And then they put out a live album. And yeah, very successful tour. So that is kind of funny. That was, arguably the apex of ELP. That may have been their high point in terms of their success. I don't know, their popularity.
Also, Steve Howe being asked to join ELP, or what would eventually become ELP, by Emerson.
Yeah, well, no, I think he was thinking about that for the Nice. I was trying to pay attention to him there, because I looked it up, and David List, of course, was the guitarist for the Nice. And it looks to me like he was only there, like, at some point, while with the Nice, List, who's the guy he was talking about, David List, briefly substituted for Syd Barrett in Pink Floyd in 1967. It was on the package tour with Jimi Hendrix. So apparently we know that Sid wasn't doing so well on that tour. We're kind of getting in the weeds here, but just to put some context on that. So Yeah, I think he was thinking about him for The Nice, and then The Nice got split up because Steve Howe, in Tomorrow, that was before Yes. So yeah, really, those two bands, everybody seemed to know each other pretty well. I don't know if there were any feuds or not, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like there was a lot of talk about feuds that weren't real. At one point, Louder Sound talked with Rick Wakeman about Keith Emerson, and it turns out that they had plans to do a tour together with John Lord at one point. I think this was early 2000s. And it just didn't end up happening. Wakeman thinks that maybe the managers were kind of conspiring to keep it from happening because they didn't think it would be a good thing. But he also went out of his way to credit Emerson with being the one to, quote, help liberate the rock keyboard player from the role of accompanist by incorporating things like the Moog that could cut a line through all the guitars and drums and everything to solo on top of everything, which is harder to do with a Hammond. Okay, so with that in mind, why don't we move on to the last album by ELP, which is called Black Moon. The song that we're going to look at is Close to Home, and it's Emerson's song alone. I'm not sure if he's the only player on it, but he's the only one credited with writing it. So there's no video of him actually playing it, except as a sound check, so we're going to go ahead and just listen to the piece, just so we can get an idea of what he was up to.
Wow, you guy's a master at the piano. I don't think I need to say that, but I'll say it anyway.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there that seemed to come both from jazz and classical origins. I'm listening to that and I'm going, well, I always think of Emerson as kind of a classical guy, but that sounded more like a lot of jazz guys that I've heard. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, when he was younger, he played in a 20-piece swing band that did Count Basie and Duke Ellington. Mm-hmm. You know, so if he's the keyboard player, he's playing the Count Basie part or the Duke Ellington parts, you know, themselves. So that's pretty good. And yeah, that's kind of what I heard in there. And I hadn't really considered that until I just heard that piece. You know, it really kind of jumped out at me right there.
This is not the first time I've heard Emerson on the piano. You didn't like just the piano, but this is very different from what I'm used to hearing from him.
Yeah, like it seems to me he had a piece on the first ELP album that was like that. There was a lot of piano involved. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think we even looked at it, actually. But it was a little different, you know? It was a little more classical based than jazz based, and that there sounded more like jazz to me. Yeah, he was really something. He was something of a pioneer. I mean, and really it would have been interesting if they'd had that trio keyboard tour of Emerson, Lord, and Wakeman. That would have just been really incredible. They were talking about, oh yeah, we'd go out, you know, we'd start playing, I don't know, Take a Pebble, and it would end up being Wakeman playing it instead of Emerson, you know, etc. You know, and I thought, oh, that actually would have been pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, that'd be a great setup.
Yeah. Oh, it turns out he liked Dudley Moore's playing too. Dudley Moore, the comedian.
Yeah,
he was actually a very good piano player.
Yeah, he was. I've seen a couple of his movies where he's playing piano, and yeah, that's him playing.
Yeah, he was straight up excellent as a musician, as a jazz piano player. So, and even wrote stuff. Yeah, so really interesting. And so a lot of people really acutely felt the loss, you know, and felt it was a real shame because, granted, even if you can't play full the way you could back when all of your joints and knuckles and everything worked perfectly, it's just a matter of aging, you know. I mean, you can't. Yeah. It's to me, it's an opportunity to start playing something a little different. That's all. Come up with something new that more accommodates that.
Yeah, he's made plenty of music anyway. You know, and it was very good and everything. You know, I don't know. I just kind of wish he held on.
Yeah. People go through their bleak periods, you know, and the fact of the matter is things usually turn around at some point. And it's just a matter of patience and time and maybe a little agony that you can get through, but it's okay. You know, it's worth it. Those are really cool. It's just nice to see what kind of an impact he had on the music community, you know, not just the fans, but the actual people involved in making all that classic music, you know, right from Steve Porcaro and Toto and the Yes guys, and it's funny that they were all that close. I mean, Chris Squire and Greg Lake being roommates. That's I had no idea.
I never heard that before.
Yeah. I mean, really early on, obviously. We're dedicating this episode, of course, to Keith Emerson on what would have been his 80th birthday. So with that, folks, why don't you let us know what you thought of all these bits of information. If you have anything you want to add to the legacy of Keith Emerson, please leave it below. Let us know if you ever saw him. And of course, we have other reactions to Keith Emerson and Emerson, Lake and Palmer content on the channel. And we've done Tarkus, we've done Take a Pebble. I think we did Knife Edge. Pirates, I think, was another.
Carnival 9.
Oh, did we do Carnival 9?
I don't think we did, no.
Oh, okay.
It's one that we should do in the future.
Oh, I see. That's a subliminal message you're sending there. Okay. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, if you have suggestions for us, please leave those below. Okay, and let us know what you thought of all of these, and if you learned anything. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you enjoyed our presentation, please subscribe. All right, thanks so much for joining us, and we will catch you on the next one, all right? Take care, folks.
See you all later.